Hello, I'm Sarah Wiskirkin, and today I'll be discussing the Paid Lunch Equity Tool, which is also known as the PLE tool. So to begin, to explain the Paid Lunch Equity, it is where the local education agencies, also known as LEAs, participating in the National School Lunch Program are required to ensure sufficient funds are provided to the nonprofit school food service account for meals served to students not eligible for free or reduced price meals. So the paid lunch equity, it is calculated for 2019-20 for the lunch increase using the 2% inflation plus 2.68% consumer price index, totaling a 4.68%. And that is specific for 2019-20. They do this annually, and last year's total was 4.31%. Why do we calculate the paid lunch equity? We do this to ensure that sufficient funds are provided to the nonprofit school food service account for those paid lunches. And we calculate that annually, like I just mentioned. So the paid lunch equity tool. This is a tool that is required to be completed annually by the local education agencies. And it has its minimum requirements each year. And if your school charges less than $3 for paid lunches during the school year 19-20, you must adjust your weighted average lunch price and/or add non-federal funds to the nonprofit school food service account. Also keep in mind that there is a 10-cent cap with the paid lunch equity tool. The tool always rounds down to the nearest 5 cents. Any extra amount, positive or negative, will be carried forward each year. To access the Paid Lunch Equity tool, you can find it at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Food and Nutrition Services website. There is a quick link at the top of this slide, and that will take you directly to our DESE Food and Nutrition Services webpage. It'll also take you directly to the Paid Lunch Equity section of the webpage. However, if you access the DESE Food and Nutrition Services webpage not through that link, you will see the column that is to the right of your screen that states the Food and Nutrition Services, and you want to go down to the highlighted portion that states Guidance and Resources. Once that is clicked upon, it will bring up the section to the left that has all the bullet points. And one of the bullet points that the arrow is pointing to states Paid Lunch Equity. You would click on that and it'll provide many resources for the Paid Lunch Equity, and it'll also provide the Paid Lunch Equity tool for that current school year. Now that we've gone into a little bit of detail about the Paid Lunch Equity and Paid Lunch Equity tool, let's dive a little deeper into completing the Paid Lunch Equity tool. So to begin, whenever you access your school year's 2019-20 Paid Lunch Equity tool, this will be a tab that you can access that is named Unrounded Requirement Finder. You can find these tabs at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet, and each of these tabs has different information required. I'm going to focus your attention on the PLE guidance and instructions real quick. If you access those two tabs, it'll provide a lot of information that I just discussed prior in this presentation, and I'll also provide instructions on how to complete the Paid Lunch Equity tool as well. So feel free to use those as your resource. However, when completing the Paid Lunch Equity tool for this school year 2019-20, you would want to begin with the Unrounded Requirement Finder tab. And once that is clicked upon, you will see these two boxes. The Step 1 box that is above, and the Complete if you do not know your school year 2018-19 Unrounded Price Requirement box, which is the one below. So step 1, what is the unrounded price requirement? So when calculating the weighted average price requirement for school year 2019-20, the unrounded price requirement for school year 18-19 must be used. You would need to refer to your school year 2018-19 PLE tool, and the PLE calculator will help calculate the unrounded price requirement. However, if the school year 2018-19 unrounded price requirement is not available, the school year 2010 and 11 weighted average price should be used. So we're going to go ahead and begin completing the PLE tool as if we knew the school year 2018-19 unrounded price requirement. So we'll go ahead and access our PLE tool for school year 2018-19, and we would go to the Reports tab, and we would input the dollar amount that is recorded on the Reports tab into the peach box. So this is the school year 2018-19 unrounded price requirement, and this is when I accessed the PLE tool for school year 2018-19. And as you can see at the very bottom of this slide, that I went to the 2018-19 Reports tab. Once I clicked on that 2018-19 Reports tab, it brought up this screenshot. So with this information, you want to ensure that it is the correct school year, and you want to go down to box A. Box A states the school year 2018-19 weighted average price requirement. You'll take that dollar amount, and in this example, it is $2.51. So you'll take that $2.51 and you would input it back into your school year 1920 PLE tool into that peach box that we mentioned previously. Once you entered in that $2.51, you will not need to complete anything else within the Unrounded Requirement Finder tab. Since that $2.51 was inputted into the peach box, it will auto-populate into the white box to the right of it. And that white box is calculating the school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement. So we have concluded that the school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement is $2.63. However, you have the option number 2 to beginning the PLE tool, and this option number 2 is if you do not know your school year 2018-19 unrounded price requirement, you will need to enter the school year 2010 and 11 weighted average price. You can see that the lower box on this slide states to complete if you do not know your school year 2018-19 unrounded price requirement. And if you follow the arrow into that peach box, that is where you will enter in your school year 2010-11 weighted average price. If you do not know your 2010 and 11 weighted average price, you will need to click on the link that is circled directly below that peach box. And that link states, if you do not know your school year 2010 and 11 weighted average price, click here. Once that link is clicked, it will bring you all the way to the school year 2010 and 11 price calculator. Once that link is selected, you will need to enter in your school year 2010-11 weighted average price data. Specifically for this data, you will need to use October 2010 data. So what is required is that you put in your October monthly number of paid lunches into boxes 1 through 10. If you have multiple buildings in your districts, feel free to input that information into separate lines with boxes 1 through 10. If you only have one building in your district, then you would only need to complete line 1. Also keep in mind that you'll also need to include your paid lunch price. So with that one building in your district, you would just put your paid lunch price for those meals that were served in October 2010. However, if you have multiple buildings, you will need to list out the paid lunch price for each of those buildings in the paid lunch price column. As you can see here that there are only 2 columns that are peach. You'll only need to input information into those peach boxes. The rest of the boxes will auto-populate from that data. And at the very bottom of this calculator, it will have a total. And once all the data is completed, it will give you a dollar amount for your school year 2010 and 11 weighted average price. You will then take that dollar amount for your 2010 and 11 weighted average price and enter it back into your unrounded Requirement Finders tab that was mentioned previously. So in this example, I am using $1.80 for our school year 2010 and 11 weighted average price. And remember about that peach box, you only need to input information into peach boxes. So the other two boxes, the gray and the yellow ones, auto-populate. So it auto-populated for price 1 for school year 17-18 requirement. Price to the nearest cent is $2.41. For price 2 for school year 2018-19, the requirement price to the nearest cent was $2.51. You will then need to take that $2.51 from this box and input it into the step 1 box into that peach section. Since that is your school year 2018-19 requirement price to the nearest cent, that is appropriate to put into that school year 2018-19 unrounded price requirement in the box below. So once you put in that $2.51, it will auto-populate that box to the right of it that states the school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement. And we have concluded that our school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement is $2.63. So once you've found your school year 19-20 weighted average price requirement, you can then proceed to school year 19-20 price calculator. So as you can see here at the bottom of the slide, I have selected the school year 19-20 price calculator. It will automatically pull the data that we inputted into the unrounded requirement finder into the top box on this slide that states the school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirements. We have now concluded that the requirement price to the nearest cent is the $2.63, and the optional price requirement, rounded down to the nearest 5 cents, is $2.60. As you can see below that box is the school year 2018-19 weighted average price calculator. So this information is needed to be completed with your data from October 2018. So this is where you will complete the peach boxes and input the data for October 2018 monthly number of paid lunches into 1 through 10 boxes. You will then need to input your paid lunch price for the corresponding building or buildings into that second column for 1 through 10. And notice that these are the peach boxes, so you would only need to input information into those 2 columns, and the rest of this calculator will auto-populate. So for example, we have that in October 2018, we had 1,215 monthly number of paid lunches sold in one of my buildings. And I sold those paid lunches for $2.55 each. I also had a second building that we sold in October 2018, 1,335 monthly number of paid lunches. And I sold those paid lunches at $2.50 each. And that is the only data that I needed to input into the calculator. The rest of the data auto-populated. So we can see that I had a total for my district in October 2018, 2,550 paid lunches sold. That gave me a monthly revenue of $6,435.75. And it also concluded that my school year 2018-19 weighted average price was $2.52. Also keep in mind that it did not ask for non-reimbursable or adult meals to be entered into this calculator. You do not want to enter that information into this calculator. It is primarily just for your paid lunches that are sold. Within the same school year 2019-20 price calculator tab, you would scroll down and the boxes that are on the right of this screen will be shown. So for the total price increase of school year 2019-20, it will be calculated and entered into the total price increase into that box. So the total price increase for school year 2019-20 is 0.08 cents. The required price increase with the 10-cent cap shows the required weighted average price the district must attain in school year 2019-20 to be in compliance with the paid lunch equity tool. This is calculated by adding the October 2018 weighted average price plus the figure from the total price increase for school year 2019-20 box up to 10 cents. Thusly, we have found that the required price increase for school year 2019-20 with the 10-cent cap is $2.60. And the two boxes below that are the remaining increase carried forward to school year 2020 and 21, and that has a dash. So that means that we have no remaining increase carried forward into the next school year. And the remaining credit carried forward to school year 2020-21 is also a dash. That means that we do not have any remaining credit carrying forward into school year 2020-21. Year 2019 and 20 price calculator tab. At the very bottom will be this box that is shown here that says step 3 in parentheses optional. So if your school has different prices for separate grade groupings or separate buildings, you will need to complete step 3, which is optional, to determine how to apply the increase to the various grade groupings. So this is a calculator that you can access that will not change anything in the rest of the paid lunch equity tool. This is just a calculator that is for you to use as a reference to ensure that you are meeting your weighted average price requirement. So feel free to play around with this price estimation calculator as much as you need to determine if you will how to meet your weighted average price. So for example, I went ahead and I took the 1,215 meals and I inputted $2.65 that each of those meals are sold for. I also did 1,335 meals sold at $2.60. And this resulted in the $2.62 as our weighted average price. So you have a few options with how to ensure that sufficient funds are provided for your paid lunches. So option 1, you can increase your school year 2019-20 average weighted price. Option 2, you can contribute non-federal sources for school year 2019-20. Option 3, you can do both of those listed above, which is a split calculator. You can do option 4, which is your at or above equity, or option 5, which means that you have the exemption granted to not increase your prices for school year 2019-20. So in this example, we're going to go ahead and select that we are increasing our school year 2019-20 average weighted price. So this is where we will go all the way down at the bottom of our paid lunch equity tool for school year 2019-20, and we will select the school year 2019-20 reports tab. Once that is selected, it will populate that tab with a very similar section that looks like the one on this slide. So here you will see that you have box A, your school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement is $2.63. And box B says optional price rounded down to the nearest 5 cents is $2.60. And below that is section 2 that states the amounts carried forward for school year 2020-21. And this is where you'll need to select the school year 2019-20 method used to ensure that sufficient funds are provided for the paid lunches. And this is a drop-down box that you will use to select your method of ensuring that sufficient funds are provided for those paid lunches. And in this example, we are stating that we are increasing our school year 2019-20 average weighted price. After that has been selected, you will now know in future years how you met and ensured that sufficient funds are provided for those paid lunches for school year 2019-20. And after all of this has been completed, you have then completed your school year 2019-20 paid lunch equity tool. So for an example, let's say that we are deciding to contribute non-federal sources for school year 2019-20. So this is in lieu of increasing our paid lunch prices for school year 2020. Thusly, if that is what we are deciding to practice, we need to go to our school year 2019-20 non-federal calculators tab. So we will click on that school year 2019-20 non-federal calculator tab, and it will bring up the similar looking screenshot to what is on your slide. Here you will see the very first box on the top states school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement. And this is similar to what we have seen throughout this slide, or throughout the paid lunch equity tool. We see that our optional price rounded down to the nearest 5 cents is $2.60. We will then go to the box below, which states the current weighted average paid price, and we'll see that that box has a dash. This is where you'll want to enter in your current weighted average paid lunch price. And note, if the school food authority does not change the weighted average paid lunch price in school year 2011 and 12, school year 2012-13, school year 2013-14, school year 2014-15, school year 2015-16, school year 2016-17, or school year 2017-18, you'll need to enter in the school year 2010 and 11 weighted average price. Otherwise, click the link below. So to begin completing the non-federal calculator tab, we already know that our school year 2018-19 weighted average price is $2.52. So I would go ahead and input that $2.52 into that blue box within the current weighted average paid price box. From there, I will work my way down the tab into the next box that states the non-federal source contribution calculator for school year 2019-20. Here, I will enter in the annual number of paid lunches for school year 2017-18. From there, it will auto-populate the boxes to the right of it. So it will take that total number of paid reimbursable lunches claimed for the previous school year, and the tool will automatically calculate and multiply that by the difference between the school year 2017-18 weighted average paid lunch price requirement and the school year 2019-20 weighted average price. We will then make our way down to the next box below, which states to enter in the total amount of non-federal source contributions for school year 2011 and 12 through school year 2018-19. However, we did not have any remaining. Keep in mind, as long as the 2019-20 annual non-federal source contribution with the 10-cent cap is met, the SFA is in compliance with the paid lunch equity tool. So once this tab has been completed, you have completed the school year 2019-20 paid lunch equity tool for option number 2. So now we're going to do an example as if we are doing a split calculator. So we're doing both increasing our school year 2019-20 weighted average price, and we are also contributing non-federal sources for school year 2019-20. Thusly, we will need to go to our school year 2019-20 paid lunch equity tool, and we'll go down to the bottom and select the school year 2019-20 split calculator tab. Once that is clicked, it will bring up the selected boxes here on your slide. 15 paid lunches sold at $2.55. I also inputted the other building's number of monthly paid lunches for October 2018. That was 1,335, and they were sold at $2.50. That gave us that our school year 2018-19 weighted average price is $2.52. It also then told me later, if you scroll down the tab, that the total price increase for school year 2019-20 is 8 cents. And the required price increase for school year 2019-20 with the 10-cent cap is $2.60. We'll then work our way down that tab, and it states that the new price for you to state your new price increase. So since you're choosing to split the required price increase between raising your paid lunch prices and contributing non-federal funds, you will need to determine your new weighted price increase. So this can be calculated using step 3 optional on the bottom of this page. So I went ahead and stated that we are increasing the school year 2019-20 weighted average price to $2.58. I determined that because I entered the number of October 2018 paid lunches and the corresponding prices into that price estimator calculator that is optional at the bottom of this tab. To alter the prices at each level to your district's desires for the paid lunch prices for school year 2019-20. Your new weighted average price will be shown in the box that is circled in red. So at the bottom right of this box, you can see that the weighted average price is the $2.58. I then put that $2.58 into that new price increase box that is peach. And then the non-federal source contribution calculator for school year 2019-20. This is where we need to enter in the annual number of paid lunches for school year 2017-18. Here I went into my books and I found the total number of annual paid lunches for school year 2017-18 was 25,432 meals. From there, it auto-populated the total remaining required price increase, and it also stated that the total school year 2019-20 annual non-federal source contribution is $508.64. So working our way back down the split calculator tab, we're going to see the boxes that state enter total amount of non-federal source funds contributed for school year 2011 and 12 through school year 2018-19. However, in this example, we did not contribute any non-federal source funds for school year 2011 and 12 through school year 2018 and 19. Thusly, our annual non-federal source contribution requirement for school year 2019-20 remains at $508.64. The boxes below that state the price increase requirement for school year 2019-20 with the 10-cent cap is 2 cents. And it also states that the school year 2019-20 annual non-federal source contribution with the 10-cent cap is $508.64. This is your required non-federal funds contribution for school year 2019-20. And the boxes below that state the remaining annual non-federal source contribution requirement carried forward to school year 2020 and 21. That shows as a dash. That means that we have $0 amounts being carried forward. We also see that the remaining credit carried forward to school year 2020-21 is a dash. That means that we have $0 amount being carried forward to school year 2020-21. Keep in mind, this is an example that we are doing, so those are factors to how you complete the Pay Lunch Equity tool. So beware that if the boxes populate with a dollar amount, that is what will be carried forward into your school year 2020-21. Also keep in mind that as long as your school year 2019-20 contribution is met, the SFA is in compliance with the Pay Lunch Equity tool. And after you had completed the Split Calculator tab, you had now completed the school year 2019-20 Paid Lunch Equity tool. So we're now going to go into some non-federal funding sources. For school year 2019-20, LEAs may continue to count as a non-federal source any funds provided by organizations for any paid meal, any proportion attributable to paid meals with direct payments made from school district funds to support lunch service, make an adjustment to the balance on the revenue and expenditures report. The excess non-federal contribution from school year 2017-18 may be subtracted from the total school year 2018-19 contribution requirement, and the per meal non-federal reimbursement for any paid meals for breakfast, lunch, etc. Some examples of unallowable non-federal funding for the paid lunch equity are money, cash, from non-program foods such as a la carte items, catering, adult meals, vending, school stores, etc. Once-a-year state payments are unallowable non-federal funding sources. And the in-kind contributions, so charging for janitorial services, cafe monitors, office supplies, utilities that were provided without cost prior to July 1st of 2011. Okay, so now we're going to do an example of the methods used to ensure the sufficient funds are provided for the paid lunches for the option 4, which is that we are at or above equity. So for my example district, I'm deciding that we are at or above equity. So I will go to the school year 2019-20 paid lunch equity tool, and I will go down to the school year 2019-20 reports tab. Once I click on that reports tab, it will pop up to this information. And in this example, we have that our school year 2019-20 weighted average price requirement is $2.63. We will then go down to section 2, that amounts carry forward to school year 2020-21. This is where we will select our method used to ensure that sufficient funds are provided for paid lunches, and we will state that we're at or above equity. We will then enter in the school year 2019-20 average weighted paid lunch price into that peach box that is pointed to by the red arrow. Once you have completed that, you have completed the Pay Lunch Equity tool for school year 2019-20. We will then go into an example of option 5, which means that the exemption was granted, that the Pay Lunch Equity tool was not needed to be completed for school year 2019-20. If a nonprofit school food service account has shown zero or positive balance as of December 31st, 2018, the SFA will not need to complete the Paid Lunch Equity tool, but must submit the DESE PLE exemption form to the state agency. So please keep that in mind that you must submit that Paid Lunch Equity exemption form annually. So this is an example of what the exemption for the Paid Lunch Equity tool looks like. So here we'll have some brief instructions at the top of the page. It'll then have you input your local education agency, also known as LEA, information. And this is where you'll need to input into each of these boxes the appropriate information. So for box 1, you need to input your opening balance for July 1st, 2018. In box 2, it'll ask for the revenues as of December 31st, 2018. So 2A will be asking for the program revenues. 2B will be the federal reimbursements. 2C will be the non-program revenues. And 2D will be the total revenues, which adds the A, B, and C totals. In box 3A, it'll be asking for food expenditures. In box 3B, it'll be asking for salary expenditures. In box 3C, it'll be asking for employee benefits. In box 3D, it'll be asking for purchase services. In box 3E, it'll be asking for equipment purchases. In box 3F, it'll be asking for supplies. And in box 3G, it will total your expenditures from A, B, C, D, E, and F boxes. In box 4, it's asking for the adjustment to balance amount. And in box 5, it will have the balance as of December 31st, 2018 total. That will then need to be submitted to the Food and Nutrition Services through that email that is provided in that instructions box. So for the Pay Lunch Equity tool, record keeping of the entire tool is required for each school year. So please keep that in mind, that we will need to see all the tabs on the Pay Lunch Equity tool that are relevant for your school district. So please keep the entire Pay Lunch Equity tool on file. So new for school year 2019-20, you will now have the option to complete the Pay Lunch Equity tool on web applications. So as you can see on this slide, we have a screenshot from web applications. So what you would need to do is to go to the upper left-hand corner of web applications and select the Applications tab. Once that Applications tab is selected, it will bring down the items that are listed to the left of that screenshot. There you'll need to look for the Paid Lunch Equity Tool tab. And once that is selected, it will bring up the Paid Lunch Equity Tool on web applications. There will be another webinar that will go into more specifics on how to complete the Paid Lunch Equity Tool on web applications in this method. However, please keep in mind that it is very important that your information is accurate in web applications. Since this information is being drawn from the web applications sections, it will need to all be checked by your school district for accuracy. So on this slide, I like to refer you to our resources on our Desi Food and Nutrition's webpage. Here you'll be able to find more resources and some great information about the Paid Lunch Equity and Paid Lunch Equity tool. You will also be able to find our Desi Food and Nutrition contact information. So here's our phone number and our email address. So if you have any questions about the Paid Lunch Equity tool, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.